Good day everyone, and now we will start our module number 4 for first quarter. And it's all about comparing and contrasting the contents of the viewed materials. So we will start on page number 3. What I need to know. So the first objective is to identify word signals that introduce comparison and contrast, distinguishing ideas that compare and contrast, use graphical representations to show comparison and contrast, and realize the value of the proper way to express comparison and contrast. And for what I know part, you have to read the text below and answer the questions that follow. So it is entitled Ways to Travel Locally, Checking in a Hotel versus Backpacking. So after reading that, you will answer this. Check it out on the line before each statement, so here, but you will just draw it on your answer sheet. So draw a star if the statement is true, then box the word that makes the statement false. So on your answer sheet, you will write first the word that makes the statement false and box it. However, if it's true, the statement is correct, then you will simply draw a shape of a star. So it's 1 to 5, and for 1 to 5, letter B, and circle the letter of the best answer. But you will just simply write the correct letter that corresponds to which will fit the statement in each number. For example, is it regardless, but, yet, compared with? You will just simply write the letter. If it's letter A, B, C, D, depending if it suits the statements. And for letter C, identify the comparison and contrast keywords found in the text. Ways to travel locally, checking in a hotel versus backpacking on page number 3. So you can go back on page number 3 and reread and find or locate the keywords for comparison or contrast. So I will give you a hint. It is like this: instead, less than, unlike, while, like those words. So they are called as keywords or transitional signals for us to know if it is for comparison or for contrast. So for what's in previous lesson, you have to learn the plot, setting, characterization as elements to be considered in viewing the writer's purpose, and it's evident that without these elements, a story has no worth. So it's very important for us to know the elements of the story, because it is really vital to make a short story or any text essential and really meaningful. So from this word puzzle, you will search for the elements of the short story. So you can search that. What are the elements of short story? So it's already discussed in our previous lessons. So based on what you have learned, based on what the elements of short story are, then you will locate here. And after locating that, you will compose a sentence using comparison and contrast keywords. So it can be however, or like the transitional devices that we can see on page number 4, like regardless, but, yet. The choices there or here are considered as the keywords for comparison and contrast. So you have to use those keywords in composing a sentence. So two things should be seen and observed in your sentence. First, the element of the short story or elements of a story that you located here will be used in a sentence. For example, climax. So climax is the first thing that I should see, or any elements of a story, climax or any elements. Then the second thing that I should see is the keyword that correspond if it's comparison or for contrast, like this, however. So the element and the keyword. So I should see two words, two essential words to make or for you to have a perfect score in each number. So it's after 5. Therefore, there are 4 remaining elements of a story in this word puzzle. So you have to use that in sentence and insert or use keywords for comparison and contrast. So two things that should be utilized and used in this activity. So for what's new, you have to read this Like the Mulave by Rafael Zulueta de Costa. So after reading the text, you will identify or you will complete this Venn diagram, qualities of the persona or the Filipino. You will write it here. So you have to identify what qualities of Filipino which the Mulave tree does not have. And here you will write the qualities of the Mulave tree which the Filipinos do not have. And in the middle, you will simply write what are the similar qualities of both Filipinos and the Mulave tree. So remember, comparison and contrast are the two terms that you usually use when looking for similarities and differences between two or more objects or things. Both are used as nouns as well as verbs. So when you say compare, it means examining the qualities with a view to discover resemblances or differences. So the keyword is resemblances or similarities for compare. And contrast, it expresses the intention of differentiating between two objects or more. It throws more light on differences than similarities. So for contrast, the keyword will be differences or the opposing ideas. So when writing an essay, for example, usually comparison and contrast became popular. As consumer, we compare and contrast the products inside the market. So comparison and contrast is part of our day-to-day dealings in life. But one should be careful in expressing these ideas. It might hurt or lighten the feelings of others. So as users of compare and contrast, we should be mindful of how we will deliver it, how we will use it, how we will utter, and how we will compose with or using comparison and contrast. Because sometimes comparison is really, it can bring hurt to other people if you compare them to others. So we should always be mindful of the feelings of other people. Remember that words are powerful. We might hurt them, or there will be a greater hurt if you will say or utter and if you will compare them to other people than hurting them physically. So we should always think and think and think before we say or deliver a message which will contain compare and contrast. So study the pictures here so we can also connect the ideas of the like the Mulave here. So for comparison, in addition to the assistance provided by the government to the victims of the Al eruption, private sectors also do their share. So when we say comparison, it's for the similarities or resemblance. So here, we can see the resemblance between government and the private sectors. So what is the resemblance? They both helped and shared the victims of the Al eruption. So even though they are in different sectors, private and the government, they have resemblance, which is to help the victims of the Al eruption. In number 2, both Miss Santos and Miss Cruz prepared their children for the opening of classes this August. So they are different persona, they are different people, but still they have resemblance or similarity, which is they are preparing their children for the opening class. I hope it's clear. Comparison, it's showing more on resemblances. For contrast, although his father is a known businessman, Carlo is treated as an ordinary employee of their company in Manila. So we can observe here contrast, meaning the difference or opposing ideas. What are the opposing ideas? His father is a known businessman, and then the opposing idea Carlo is still treated as ordinary employee. Maybe in reality, we have to try and make our own identity despite the achievements of our parents or our relatives. So we have to create our own successes in life. So opposing ideas, even though his father is a known businessman, still he is treated as an ordinary. So known businessman and ordinary. So they are very opposing to one another. For number 2, under such conditions of the agricultural land, the soil nevertheless produces crops of rice from 300 to 400 sacks. So we can see here the opposing idea, the condition of the agricultural land and the production of crops. So even though it's not good, the condition of the agricultural land, still there is a production of crops of rice from 300 to 400 sacks. So even though it's negative or it has positive or negative impact, if there are opposing ideas, still it's under contrast, because two opposing or two unlike ideas, they are showed together to make an impact or a complete message. However, in comparison, it's just simply highlighting the similarities or resemblance of the ideas within the sentence. However, in contrast, there are opposite ideas to create an impact or message. So we have keywords for comparing and contrasting for comparison, also as well as both comparatively in the same way, in addition, just as, like, most important, similarly, the same as, to. So comparison, meaning these are the keywords to show the similarities of ideas within a sentence or within a text. For contrast, we have although, besides, but, compared with, conversely, differ, even though, furthermore, however, in contrast to, instead, less than, more than. So for contrast, we are showing, or we will highlight that even though there are ideas which are opposing to one another, one negative, one positive, still there will be an impact. There will be a complete message, like here, known businessman and ordinary. So even though they are contrasting one another, still there is a positive or a negative impact as long as there is message or complete message after that. So again, comparison is for resemblance or similarities, and contrast is more on even though there are contrasting or opposing ideas, still there will be a complete message or it will create an impact. I hope it's clear, and we will proceed to activities. So for what's more, independent activity number 1, agree or disagree. So you will determine if you agree or disagree with each statement below. So comparison means examining the qualities with a view to discover resemblance or differences. Agree or disagree. Number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. On your answer sheet, you will just simply write if it's agree or if you agree or disagree based on what you have understood according to our discussion a while ago. For independent assessment number 1, you will simply draw a happy face before each number if the statement expresses comparison, and you will draw a sad face if it is for contrast. So simply draw a happy face on your answer sheet if it's for comparison or if it shows resemblance or similarities. However, you will draw a sad face if it's for contrast that shows opposing ideas. So 1 to 5, you will read each statement, determine if it is comparison or contrast. So for number 2, you will supply each number by keywords which are suitable if it's for comparison or for contrast. So we have scrambled letter here, and you have to unscramble those letters in order to guess the answer in each number, in order to guess the keyword in each number. So we have here, you have to unscramble rather. So for independent assessment 2, Identify the underlined phrase or clause in each statement on the line before each number. Write comp if it expresses comparison, and cont if it shows contrast. So simply determining if it is comparison and contrast. Comparison, resemblance, and similarities. Contrast, meaning opposing ideas or somehow they are not jiving together. So you have to read those underlined phrases and clauses and identify if it's comparison or contrast by writing comp, C-O-M-P, capitalized, C-O-N-T if it's for contrast. So it's 1 to 5 also. So you have to read those underlined phrases and clauses. For independent activity number 3, contrast this. So read each statement below, then complete the table by answering the given questions. The first one is done for you. So in each statement, there are ideas being contrasted or they are opposing one another. Like in number 1, Carlo went home walking instead of riding in a jeepney. So what are the ideas being contrasted there? So the word walking and riding in a jeepney because of the word instead. So they are really opposing because walking is really different from riding in a jeepney, because if you are riding in a jeepney, you are not walking. If you are walking, you are not riding in a jeepney. So they are completely opposing one another. In number 2, what are the opposing? Lily can enroll in college if she becomes a student assistant in the library. So what are the contrasting? And you will do the same thing until number 5. So they are contrasting to one another. So one here, an idea here and another idea here, which are opposing one another. So for independent assessment number 3, you just simply write if it's comparison, contrast, or both comparison and contrast, or none. So you don't need to copy these things on your activity sheet. You will just simply write if it's comparison or contrast, both or none. So you have to read the sentences. Early Filipinos believed that herbs could cure more diseases compared to medicine sold in the pharmacy. So is it for comparison or contrast? Both or none? So same thing will be done until number 5. So you don't have to shade it. You don't need to copy this one on your answer sheet, but you will just simply write if it's comparison, contrast, both, or none. For what I have learned, you will simply write 2 to 3 sentences about your realization, about the difference of comparison and contrast. What did you learn? So for what I can do, compare and contrast 2 places you visited within our country using your own diagram. Make sure to showcase their similarities and differences. So it's very important. For example, you went to Pangasinan, then you also went to Manila. So what are the comparison and the contrasting ideas that they have? So it is objective. There are no incorrect answers. So you have to simply have the differences and similarities of 2 places you have visited. For assessment, write true or T if it's true, then write F if it is false. So it's all about the compare and contrast. So same idea. So it's clearly seen that you should have a clear understanding about the differences of compare and contrast. So T if it's true, F it's false. Remember, it's capitalized. So let's check it. So the ideas here, you will identify if it is compare and contrast. So simply write compare if it's for comparison, then contrast if it's for contrast. So it's 1 to 10. Just simply write compare or contrast. For additional activity, you have to identify 2 fiestas in your locality. For example, we are celebrating a 3-day fiesta here in Obando. So if you will compare the first day to second day to third day, or third day, first day, like that, why do people celebrate this fiesta? When? How? What? So you have to fill out this table to see the differences of the fiesta. Maybe there is a common reason why people celebrate those fiesta. So you will just complete this table. So I hope you learn about our module number 4, which is all about comparing and contrasting the contents of the viewed materials. So comparing, it's for resemblances and similarities. Contrasting, we are using ideas which are opposing one another in a sentence. Goodbye, stay safe, and God bless.